CBS Sports.
High drive, center field, off the wall, grand slam. This is magnificent.
Got a fantasy question? Email fantasybaseball@cbsi.com. Get ready to win your league.
Where fantasy becomes reality.
Now here's Frank, Scott, Chris, and Adam.
Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today, and welcome to part 2 of our Outfield preview for the 2021 season. Frank Stanfield joined, as always, by Scotty Dubs, Scott White, and CPT, Chris Towers, and maybe a cat, Chris. I mean, your cat stole the show last night. Everyone's talking about David Bowie in the chat right now. Any chance we get another appearance?
I kicked David Bowie out of the room today because yesterday it was too much. I'm glad everyone enjoyed it, but she was biting me. She was yelling at me. It was just too much. I couldn't concentrate, and I think my performance was affected. And frankly, she might have broken the skin on one of those. So I had to put her outside. She'll be back soon, but she needs a day off. A
day off. All right, makes sense. I thought it was
just want to get right, and we'll get back out there later in this week. Just want to get some work out of the limelight, and make sure that we're ready for the next time that we have to rely on her.
I thought it was your best podcast yet, actually, Chris. So
it's fair. It's low bar.
Hopefully you guys are ready to talk about 100 more outfielders. Somehow I only got to 13 outfielders in ADP yesterday. We spoke about a few more with sleepers, breakouts, and busts, but we have a long road to go down tonight. So let's get it done, and let's pick up where we left off yesterday in terms of ADP, and we'll jump right into the 5th round. 3 outfielders going in the 5th round of ADP. Aaron Judge, who I had as a bust on yesterday's podcast. Starling Marte going at pick 52 on average, according to Fantasy Pros. And Randy Arozarena, who is going off the board at pick 59. Scott, you spoke about him a little bit, as well as part of the prospects that we need to know entering the season. But Randy Arozarena, not your typical prospect, because he's going inside the top 60 picks based on what he did in the postseason. Would you actually draft him that early to get him?
We have a sighting of another cat. This isn't David Bowie. Apparently, Chris
this is
we
need to work on like a video, like the Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time America, going pointing every time one of the cats makes an appearance. We need to work on that as a video drop for
What's
the show.
that cat's name?
This is Liz Lemon. This is the old cat.
Okay, old cat.
Old cat.
Right.
A little more.
Anyway.
She's only like 6.
Randy Arozarena hit 17 home runs between the regular season and playoffs last year, and hit, I think, around 333. So it was awesome. It was awesome, and for a pretty extended stretch. The 17 home runs were as many as Mike Trout hit, but in fewer at bats. Yeah. I mean, 59th overall for a guy who at this time last year, we were thinking he'd play a 4th outfielder role for the Rays. It's aggressive. I understand it because, there's also some base stealing potential there for Arozarena. It's hard when somebody gets his 17 home runs into a home run binge. It's hard to just dismiss it, I think. And I'm more inclined to believe than not. I think I said yesterday I was maybe 80 to 85% on board with Arozarena, and I think I'd have to be 90 to 95% on board with him to take him where he's going, 59th. If it was 79th, be a different story. But this is putting a little too much faith in him for me.
How many games was it total?
It was 43 games, including the regular and the postseason, Chris.
Okay, that's very similar to what Luke Voit did in 2018. 14 homers in 39 games. Another Cardinals guy. So, and Arozarena was a Cardinals guy, right?
He was.
Maybe the devil magic has just worn off, and maybe they only get devil magic when they leave.
Or passing it on.
Yeah,
taking it for granted.
I don't love Arozarena at the price, but the ability to steal, potentially 20 bases while hitting for power, it does make him pretty alluring.
Yeah, the projection systems love Randy Arozarena. If you go to Fangraphs and look him up, you'll see they all have him for 20 plus home runs, at least 16 steals. between a 257 and 269 batting average. So he was awesome last year in a postseason filled with superstar players. Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, Ronald Acuna, Freddie Freeman. Randy Arozarena was the best hitter playing. So it just says a lot about what he did. Had a lot of confidence. He made adjustments. So I don't know that I'm going to have many shares just because it's a really, really big price tag to pay based on, what do we say, 43 games? But yeah, that is Randy Arozarena. Chris, Starling Marte is now with your Miami Marlins, and this seems like an easy buy at his price, especially in Roto. Probably only in Roto, maybe, but he was a top 30 overall player in both 2018 and 2019. And although he is still 32 years old, the sprint speed still in the 89th percentile. So I think we're still pretty safe here for close to a 2020 bet on Starling Marte.
Yeah, and I know he broke his thumb or his hand late in the season. I'm not sure. I think he played through it. I'm not sure whether that affected him at all. No, that was pretty late. So I don't think that was an impact. But yeah, he's a solid hitter. He's not a superstar hitter, but I think he'll probably be good for 20 to 25 stolen bases with solid production across the board. He'll hit leadoff. I don't think it'll be a particularly good Marlins lineup, but at least the top end of it does have some guys who are major league caliber players. So, and there's room for, growth from that offense. They've got some younger guys who could take a step forward. So I think I have Marte. I'm pretty sure I have him ahead of his. Yeah, I have him a lot ahead of his ADP. I have him in the top 40 at the number 12 overall outfielder in Roto.
Yep. So again, that's Starling Marte now with the Miami Marlins. I don't want to speak for you guys. I had Aaron Judge as a bust on yesterday's podcast, but more so in a batting average 5x5 context. He's still really, really good in points leagues because he walks so much. He's going to have a really high OBP. So if you play in any type of OBP format, the biggest thing for me is I don't think that Judge and Stanton are going to be that different, and Stanton's going 60 picks later. So Scott, I don't want to speak for you. Where you at on Aaron Judge?
Yeah, no, I like him more than you do. I actually tier him with Marcell Ozuna and George Springer and Eloy Jimenez. It's just a question. I mean, he's going to be a stud if he stays healthy. His, per plate appearance production over the past few years when he hasn't been so healthy has still been elite. And I hear what you're saying about Stanton, but Stanton has a longer track record of not staying healthy, and as of now he's not outfield eligible. So I think the gap between them, it's probably a little extreme, but it's understandable.
Yeah, I mean, I would point out Stanton was healthier in 17 and 18, but Judge has been more productive. That's the thing, is if you look at over the last 3 seasons per 162 game production, Judge has averaged, I think, 43 homers per 162. Stanton's like 38. I'm not sure exactly, that's a relatively small difference, especially when we're talking about the fact that, Stanton's played about 200 games in that time and Judge is only, maybe 240. So, you don't want to put too much stock in a per 162 pace, but I do generally think Judge is a better hitter than Stanton at this point in their careers. And I have him ranked higher as well. I think the injury risk is about the same, though.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. 3 more outfielders going in the 6th round. Trent Grisham going at pick 62. Brandon Lau at pick 64. We spoke about him a lot on our second base position preview. Michael Conforto going off the board at pick 67. So let's talk about Trent Grisham, because Chris, you have him as your 30th ranked outfielder, and I have him all the way up at number 15. So quite a bit higher than you. And I think that, if we all love Kyle Tucker, I understand that he comes more prospect pedigree. I think they are very similar players, Kyle Tucker and Trent Grisham. Grisham was the 38th overall player in Roto last year, 3.2 fantasy points per game, solid OBP, 352, 12% walk rate, 10 homers, 10 steals for Trent Grisham. He's going to lead off at least against right-handed pitching for the San Diego Padres. And people talk about him like he's bad against lefties. 737 OPS against lefties in the majors. It's not terrible. It's adequate. I think it's passable. So tell us why you hate the man, Trent Grisham.
Well, I think with the Kyle Tucker comparison, first off, I think the place you have to start with is one, Kyle Tucker was better than him last year. Has been, I guess, the minor league overall or the major league overall track record for Tucker is kind of weighted down by that 2018 28 game stretch when he was 21. But the minor league track record is much better. You're talking about an 863 OPS for Tucker versus 791. And there are some warning signs in Trent Grisham's profile that I don't want to overlook. One, he struck out about 25% of the time so far in the majors, and that was the same last season. That was one of the things he didn't really improve on in his second taste of the majors. The other thing is 16% infield fly ball rate last season. That is very high for a guy who strikes out that much, and it makes me think that he's always probably, not always, if he doesn't improve that factor of his game, he's going to be a batting average liability. And there's a relatively low ceiling on him as a result in batting average. Then there's the fact that I think he, probably overperformed in terms of home runs last season, 20% home run to fly ball ratio. I think that probably, even with the juiced ball, would probably be more like 14 or 15% with how hard he hits the ball. I just think there are probably too many warning signs in the profile for where he's going, which is the end of the 5th round in a 12-team league or early 6th round.
I just think if he kind of does what he did last year, he's going to pay off. Like, he's going to be better than where he's going right now. And he was on pace for 106 runs scored last season, over 150 games. The Padres lineup is still really good. I have faith that he's going to run. Jace Tingler is a manager that likes to let the Padres run. So I think 2020 with 100 runs seems doable.
I think the steals are a big part of it. He was not really a big steals guy for the last couple of years in the minors, but that was with a different organization. He was 11 in 107 games in 2018, 13 in 148 between the majors and minors in 2019, and then he stole 10 in 59 games in 2020. If he's a 20 to 25 stolen base guy, and he was 10 of 11 for steals, so I don't think you can just project 25 steals, but maybe 20 on 26 attempts or something like that. That goes a long way towards making his profile look a lot better, even if he's a 250 hitter with 15 to 20 home runs. It's just that hasn't been a consistent part of his game in the minors.
And that's why I think he's going as high as he is, because you look at what's coming after him. There aren't many likely 20 steal guys who also contribute in other areas, contribute power or batting average the way Starling Marte does. Grisham, you're counting on him hitting for power too. So he for roto leagues, he has that prospect of steals, that likelihood of contributing in that ultra scarce category. And then, in a points league context, he walks at a 12% rate. And that's something he did. He's always been a good walker throughout his minor league career. That was something he did, was get on base. So I'm not sure we need him to really be of much help in batting average. Because I hear what you're saying. I think, probably 245 to 265, maybe 270 is the range we're talking about for Grisham. I'm just not sure. I just think he contributes in enough other areas that's going to be okay.
Yeah. The other thing I would add is he hit 9th against lefties pretty much exclusively down the stretch last season. 7 of his final 27 starts were batting 9th. I don't know what that means as far as what it's likely to mean for 2020, but just throwing that out there as well. If the Padres don't believe he can hit lefties, or at least can't hit them well, this is a team with a ton of redundancies. And Tommy Pham can play center field. Will Myers has played center field. I don't know if they would feel comfortable putting him in there more than, a few times, but it's worth keeping in mind. And, Ha-Seong Kim is working in the outfield. I think it's primarily in the corners, but, this is a team with a lot of moving parts. And it's not out of the question that Trent Grisham ends up a role or a, platoon player.
I hear what you're saying. It's not out of the question. You're right. It's within the range of outcomes. Maybe I got these rose-colored glasses on for Trent Grisham for whatever reason. The final point that you need to know regarding the speed, 96th percentile on StatCast in sprint speed for Trent Grisham. Michael Conforto was the other name I wanted to mention here, going in the 6th round, pick 67. Scott, there's no chance that he replicates a 412 BABIP over the course of a full season. Again, I feel confident saying that, but I will say Michael Conforto has now had a 925 OPS or better in 2 of his last 4 seasons. So I still think there's a chance that he has this monster season in him. Maybe not to the same extent that we talk about Castellanos, but like 270 with like 30 to 35 home runs with really good counting stats. I think it's definitely doable for Michael Conforto.
Well, the monster season wasn't last year.
Well,
that was a partial season.
A partial season.
I don't really understand why Conforto's going this high. If we're not buying the batting average, because last year he hit 322. I don't think we should buy the batting average. You pointed out the BABIP. His career high before last year's 322 mark was 279, and he was a career 253 hitter heading into last year. So, power hitter, gets on base at a good rate. I don't know. He always struck me as like a younger version of Carlos Santana, except not even quite on base skills that good. And we've never seen Carlos Santana get elevated to this level. So I feel like people are taking the batting average seriously to be taking Michael Conforto this high, and I can't really get on board with that. I think he's a solid starter, must start outfield in fantasy, but I don't really think he's on the verge of like being a stud or anything.
Yeah, I think part of it is there's excitement about the Mets offense in general. And I think, there could be a ton of opportunities for counting stats there. Like he could be an easy 100 guy. So that's one of the things Conforto has going for him is he could just end up being, a really strong 4 category contributor. But I agree. Like I think the realistic ceiling is probably more like a 280 average. And I'm fine drafting him here. He's my number 17 outfielder. I don't necessarily have any problem with him. I have him a little higher than ADP, but what ends up happening is I usually can wait a few rounds while he's at the top of my queue before having to take him.
Mm-hmm.
3 more outfielders going off the board in the 7th round. Charlie Blackmon at pick 76. Teoscar Hernandez at pick 77, who Scott had as his most confident bust of the 2021 season on yesterday's podcast, and Nick Castellanos at pick 81, who Scott also had as his breakout for the 2021 season. Let's focus on Charlie Blackmon here since we haven't talked about him yet, and he's getting up there in age. There's no Nolan Arenado in the Rockies lineup anymore, and it was a weird season for Charlie Blackmon. It was a weird season for everybody, but it was especially weird for Charlie Blackmon. First 28 games, he hit 405 with an OPS over 1,000. His final 31 games, a 200 batting average with a 603 OPS. He had a bunch of weird splits last year where he wasn't great against right-handed pitching, where he's always great against right-handed pitching. He had a 797 OPS in Coors Field last year, and that's 987 for his career. So, Scott, where do you land on Charlie Blackmon? Because it feels like there's some other outfielders going in this range. Really, it's Castellanos, who potentially have more upside than someone like Blackmon at this point.
Yeah, I can't help but feel a little worried about Blackmon. He's turning 35 this year. We've seen some of the skills diminish, some of the underlying athletic stuff, like how well he plays defense, how much he runs. We saw that declining for a few years prior to last year. And even when he was hot early on last year, it's not like there was a lot of power production. It was mostly because of an inflated BABIP. So I'm starting to get worried about Blackmon. I think this is a fair place to draft him. I mean, it wasn't that long ago he was somebody we always drafted in the first 3 rounds. So I think this is a fair downgrade for him. I can't really get excited about taking him here. Maybe I'm just always looking at Nick Castellanos at this spot and somebody ends up taking Blackmon. So it's never a thought that even has to cross my mind. But I feel like my concerns for Blackmon are high enough that if I'm going to take him, it has to be at a discount.
Regarding upside, I will just say, I don't know if Nick Castellanos actually has more upside than like just Charlie Blackmon's 2019. If Nick Castellanos ever did that, there would be dancing in the streets and parades thrown in his honor. He hit 314 with 32 homers and 198 RBI plus runs in 140 games. Like I don't actually know if Nick Castellanos has more upside than Charlie Blackmon, unless we just think there's no way Charlie Blackmon can get back to 2019. But we kind of did that in 2018, where people started to write him off a little bit because there was some slippage. And then 2019, he came right back and had a huge season. So Coors Field is still a really powerful factor in his favor. That makes me think he's probably still going to be a very good source of batting average. He's probably going to score a good amount of runs and just
those
generally
are the two categories
be
I feel
solid.
best about.
Yeah.
With the chance for another awesome Charlie Blackmon season.
It's possible. I am probably closer to the former there, Chris, that you mentioned, where you just don't think it's possible for him. And I think, getting into the mid 30s in terms of age there for Blackmon has me a little bit more worried about him than most. If you didn't get to listen or watch yesterday's podcast when we talked about Nick Castellanos, Scott called him this year's Marcell Ozuna, which I think is very fair. The StatCast numbers for Castellanos indicate that he was unlucky last season. He hit 225. The expected batting average was 273. He also had great other StatCast marks as well. I mean, posted career highs in barrel rate, average exit velocity, hard hit rate. Again, this is Nick Castellanos. So as long as he sees some good BABIP luck go the other direction, then I think we could see, something like a 275, 30 plus home run season out of Castellanos. And that's like a conservative floor. I still think that we can get this just massive season out of Nick Castellanos. Guys, I sent you an article earlier today regarding Teoscar Hernandez, and it was written very well. It was by Chris Black. It's on the Sportsnet Sportsnet website, but it was highlighting how Teoscar basically completely changed his approach last year. He was very patient with pitches inside the zone and did a better job recognizing pitchers' mistakes. So we know how Scott feels. Chris, I will just say, has that influenced you at all? Are you just still out on Teoscar Hernandez?
No, I mean, the one of the things about that story was there was a lot of you might think he was being more patient, or you might think he was, being more selective and not swinging at pitches out of the zone, and it wasn't really. Most of the data didn't quite back up the idea that Teoscar Hernandez had made this big leap in plate discipline. So I'll just kind of stand by what what my general philosophy has been, which is, if I'm going to buy into a small sample size breakout, at the very least, this player has to show new skills. And Teoscar Hernandez didn't do that. He still struck out, at what would be among a league leading rate. He walked slightly more, but not, at a really high rate. He's always hit the ball hard. He's always been athletic. It just kind of seems like Teoscar Hernandez got hot, and I don't want to pay for a 60-game hot streak.
3 more outfield eligible players are going between picks 90 and 99. That includes Lourdes Gurriel, Teoscar Hernandez's teammate, going at pick 90. Jeff McNeil going at pick 91. We spoke about him on our second base position preview. And Austin Meadows going at pick 99. And I am confident saying I think Austin Meadows is the outfielder that I want most in drafts, and he is the one that I will wind up most this draft season. It's very close with Nick Castellanos. I like both of those guys quite a bit. Last year, the ADP for Austin Meadows was 40, and this year, of course, he's going 50 to 60 picks later than that. He's still just 25 years old. I'm giving him a mulligan for last season. Similar to Yoel Moncada, Meadows had COVID right before the season started. Then he dealt with an oblique injury. So I know he let a lot of people down, but this is someone who was a top 12 outfielder in Roto back in 2019, and he averaged 3.5 fantasy points per game. Does he get back to that level? Maybe not, but I still think that there's a lot of talent with one Austin Meadows. Scott, where are you at on? Let's focus on Lourdes Gurriel and Meadows, since we spoke about McNeil on the second base position preview.
Well, I think between those two, I'd rather have Meadows, but it seems like there's more helium for Meadows, I guess, right? I feel like certainly a lot of the people we talk to in the fantasy baseball analysis world are pretty much on board with you. What you think of Meadows, Frank? And you know, I'm a little more cautious. I'm a little more cautious because I had some skepticism surrounding those 2019 numbers in the first place. I didn't like the way the Rays didn't stick it out with Meadows last year. They kept sitting him against lefty. I think it was against lefty. They set him a lot down the stretch. And I know he was coming back from COVID and maybe he deserves a complete pass for that. But I just keep coming back to the Rays like to take players out of the lineup a lot. And I don't really know that I buy everything Meadows did in 2019 to begin with. So I'm probably not going to have much Meadows just because of the people I draft with. I know they like him more. Gurriel, I'm more likely to get. I think Gurriel is kind of a light version of Eloy Jimenez, actually, in that I expect him to help in both batting average and home runs. Maybe not with quite the power Jimenez has, but not far off either. I think given the price tag, I like Gurriel more than Jimenez if we're factoring in that price tag.
Last 162 games for Lourdes Gurriel, he's batting .285 with 35 home runs, 9 steals, and an .855 OPS. Just rock solid. A very safe player, I would say, in Lourdes Gurriel. He's had an average exit velocity over 90 miles per hour in each of the past 3 seasons as well. Chris, anything that you wanted to add on Gurriel and Meadows? I will just ask, do you worry at all about playing time for Gurriel and Teoscar Hernandez in particular now that the Blue Jays have quite a bit of depth?
I think if they hit, it's not going to be a problem. They do have depth, but I'm not sold on Teoscar Hernandez being an everyday player. I'm not sold on Rowdy Tellez being someone who needs to be in the lineup every day as a DH. And so,
Chris,
among those guys, I would say Lourdes Gurriel is probably the safest option. He's not like super toolsy and he doesn't flash much and he doesn't really seem to stand out. He's kind of just like slightly above average at everything. And that kind of profile can be super valuable. But it's also the kind of thing where, maybe with a dejuiced ball, if he sees a 15% drop in home runs, all of a sudden it kind of drags the overall profile down. And I think there's a little bit of concern there, but overall, I think he's, being valued fine. I do like Meadows quite a bit more. I'm with you on the bounce back potential there. I think buying guys who had COVID last year is probably a market inefficiency. I don't know. Obviously, it's, we're dealing with completely unknown circumstances. We've never experienced something like this, but it just feels right to me. It feels like a pretty good excuse for a guy who had a bad season. Obviously, it would feel even better if Freddie Freeman didn't exist, I guess.
Yeah, right. Because he got COVID and then went on to win the MVP, but it does affect everybody differently. And obviously, Yoan Moncada complained about how it affected him. Meadows, I didn't really see it, but I didn't see any quotes about him complaining, but we'll make it up anyway because it fits the narrative. And I love Austin Meadows. The last thing I'll add about him is if you're worried about the splits, yes, he did sit down the stretch against some tougher lefties. 837 OPS against lefties in 2019, a 921 OPS against lefties in 2018. So I think Austin Meadows is fully capable of doing it. It's just, it's a matter of the Rays actually having confidence and leaving him out there. We see 5 more outfielders go in the round 10 range. Dom Smith at 109, Eddie Rosario at 112, Chris Bryant at 113, who also has third base eligibility. Dom Smith also has first base eligibility. Mike Yastrzemski at pick 116 and Byron Buxton at 119. We are going to focus on Rosario, Yastrzemski, and Byron Buxton from this group. But, man, Eddie Rosario, he's a lot like Lourdes Gurriel. I don't really know why they're going as many rounds apart as they are. And I don't think anything has to do with Gurriel. I think Gurriel is fine and he should be going inside the top 100. I just think that Eddie Rosario for some reason is undervalued, but okay, let's buy that because, he's been awesome for fantasy. Eddie Rosario just prints money. He has finished as a top 60 roto player in each of the past 3 seasons. He barely walks, so you assume that would affect him in points leagues. That is wrong. 3.1 fantasy points per game in each of the past 3 seasons as well. And I don't know if this is actually a thing, but last year he had a career high 8.2% walk rate. Again, this is Eddie Rosario. And Scott, I know that you brought up he has hit very well in Progressive Field, which is where he will now call home, playing with the Cleveland Indians.
Yeah, and I don't know. Look, it's a pretty decent sample, obviously. He's spent his whole career in the AL Central, so he's gotten a lot of time playing in Cleveland, and the numbers have been ridiculous there for Eddie Rosario. 353 batting average, 11 home runs, and a 1031 OPS in 45 games. I don't think that's magically who he becomes now that he's with Cleveland, but clearly the ballpark isn't going to hold him back. That I at least take that from it. He's just been really steady as a 25 to 30 homer guy who also contributes in batting average. He didn't contribute in batting average in the shortened season last year, but the strikeout rate was still below 15%. He had some bad BABIP luck. I still see him as somebody who's going to contribute in that category. And I mean, for where you can get him, like this is my wheelhouse in the outfield. Eddie Rosario, Mike Yastrzemski. I'm going to have a lot of those guys as my number 1, number 2. Yastrzemski, I think, is being underrated too. I think he's a slightly less powerful version of Michael Conforto, and potentially deserves to go much higher than this. Yastrzemski doesn't points leagues because of how good he is at getting on base. But he's an everyday player now. He's San Francisco's best hitter. And I tend to see him in expert drafts fall beyond his ADP here. So I wind up with Yastrzemski sometimes as like my number 3 outfielder, even though I'm not investing much in the outfield.
Yeah, Mike Yastrzemski, someone who I think falls down draft boards a little bit because he's kind of this random mid-career breakout guy, journeyman in the minor leagues. He is 30 years old with the San Francisco Giants, but Yastrzemski has played 161 career games to this point, 281 batting average, 31 homers, 103 runs, 90 RBI, and 892 OPS. If he was 25 years old versus 30, he would be a top 60 pick. So it's pretty crazy when it comes to someone like Mike Yastrzemski, and really, really good splits as well. 967 OPS against lefties in his career. I agree 100%. In a points league, if I wound up with Yastrzemski as my second outfielder, I'd be doing backflips. I'm perfectly fine with that. Chris, you find yourself as the Byron Buxton supporter, the advocate, and I believe you have him, if I saw this correctly, I think it was 20th, ranked 20th in the outfield, whereas I have him at 32 and Scott has him all the way down at 46. So
what are we talking about?
Byron Buxton.
Oh, okay.
Chris loves Byron Buxton.
The person who is least concerned about injuries in general naturally is the highest on Byron Buxton.
Makes sense.
Yeah, let me stall here for just a second while I type furiously so I can look up a comparison that I just thought of really quickly. Okay.
Wow. You got it. It's all yours.
How would you feel this season if Trent Grisham hit 259 with 23 home runs, 16 stolen bases, and the steals and the runs in RBI, it's only 140, but it was only 126 games. So, the pace over a 162 game season is obviously even higher. It's 191 runs in RBI. You'd be pretty thrilled with a Trent Grisham season where he hit 23 homers, stole 16 bases, and hit 259, right?
Sure.
I appreciate you are just,
just objectively speaking, that would be an amazing season for Trent Grisham.
It would be an amazing season for Byron Buxton too.
That's what Byron Buxton's done the last 2 seasons combined.
Mm-hmm.
And he can't stay healthy. Fine. Who can? Who among us? I'm not going to knock someone. I felt a little adductor strain the other day when I slipped on some ice. I'm okay. But I felt it. Look, man, he's 27 years old. Though there is no questioning how talented Byron Buxton is, no matter how skeptical you are of his ability to stay healthy or ability to make contact consistently. He is an incredibly talented player. The batted ball data the last couple of seasons has backed up this power breakout. he has sold out for power. That is 100% true, and his plate discipline has not been good as a result. But you know what? He had an average exit velocity last season of 91.2 miles per hour. It was 90.1 the year before. His barrel rate is right around 10%, 11% over the last 2 seasons combined. I just think he's really good. I think he's a rare power speed threat who's not being valued like it.
Oh, I need to point out he spent 5 years in the majors, right? I mean, I guess 2015, I assume he was called up at some point in the middle of the season, so I won't count that. 5 seasons. Only once played even 100 games.
Yep.
And maybe, he wasn't going to get to 100 last year, obviously, but he played 39 in a 60-game season. Like, the guy misses half a season just about every season.
He has so far. That is an accurate description of the way Byron Buxton's career has gone so far. I will point out,
a long time.
2016, he actually did play 151 games. It was just 49 of them were in AAA, so we don't count those. Yeah, he's had trouble staying healthy. That's why a guy who could easily go 25-25 is going, 170th overall.
Yeah. And I wish
overall,
I wish there was more
overstated
consistency to his actual numbers, because like last year he basically never walked and his strikeout rate went back up some. And I'm not confident in what he's going to do for you, even if he stays healthy. That's part of it too. So like, I'm not confident he's going to be a big base stealer. He stole 2 bases last year.
He is, if he's not still the fastest player in baseball, you don't need to go to a second hand.
But that's not what
right,
being
but
fast doesn't equate to stealing bases.
Right, but he had 29 steals in 140 games in 2017, 5 in 28 games, 14 in 87 games. Last year is the clear outlier. I don't think Byron Buxton's going to be a 30 steal guy. He is very selective. And he'll probably be a pretty low OBP guy, but if Byron Buxton does manage to get 500 plate appearances, I'll set the over-under at 20.5 stolen bases, and I'll take the over.
He is a weird player. That is the last thing that my takeaway is. I really don't know how to value Byron Buxton. I'm not drafting him in a points league. I would look at him as maybe my second or third outfielder in a roto league, but has been able to stay healthy. He had 2 walks last year in 39 games, a 51% chase rate. League average is 30.6%.
You know what he had a lot of, though? Sprints. Very fast.
We'll see what happens with Byron Buxton. But
look, I just think it's a chance to bet on an elite skill set that gets valued. Like if he had a better season than Randy Arozarena, I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't disagree. I just wish the price tag was lower. That's what it comes down to. His ADP is 119. If he was going closer to like Victor Robles down at like 175, then I think I'd be able to get behind it. But
yeah, but if Victor Robles could hit like Byron Buxton, he wouldn't be going that low.
You know what? I think Lorenzo. I look at Buxton versus Lorenzo Cain, and I think, if Cain stays healthy, he's stealing 20 bases. He's probably a 300 hitter. Maybe Buxton has more power upside, but I don't see Buxton hitting 30 home runs even if he stays healthy. He's never hit 20 home runs before, so I don't know. I don't know.
Let's move on, and we're not going to be able to have a discussion like that for any other players. But round 11 has 5 more outfielders going off the board. Alex Verdugo at pick 126, Tommy Pham at 129, Will Myers at 130, Kyle Lewis at 131, and Michael Brantley at 133. This is a really interesting group, Scott. You have 2 younger players in Verdugo and Kyle Lewis who look like they have some upside, and then you have pretty solid contributors who are a little bit older, and Pham, Myers, and Brantley, and there's some injury risk with all of them, and definitely with Tommy Pham. So who is your favorite to draft from this group? Verdugo, Pham, Myers, Lewis, Brantley, if any of them?
I think it's pretty easily Myers, and I don't know why Teoscar Hernandez is getting all the credit that maybe Myers deserves too, except, Myers has a better track record of success. He actually did greatly improve his strikeout rate last year, unlike Teoscar Hernandez, and we saw him have similar power production. I guess. Well, I don't even know that you could argue
the steals were down for Will Myers. That was the thing last year. Yeah.
They were, but
Weird because everybody else ran for the Padres.
And the previous 2 years when he wasn't hitting, Myers did keep running. So I don't really think I'm giving him a pass for that. I'm giving Myers a pass for that. I think he's still got a good shot at 15 to 20 steals if he's in the lineup regularly. If he can sustain those gains as a hitter, it's obviously no guarantee. Short season, did show greatly improved plate discipline, but it was a short season and maybe just a fluke. I think there's more reason to believe in Will Myers, though, his return to form than Teoscar Hernandez's breakthrough, and yet Myers is going 50 picks later, 40 picks later.
Yeah,
50 picks later.
Myers at pick 130 and Teoscar, I think it's at like 77, right? Yeah, so about 53 picks later. It's a good point that you bring up. Will Myers was awesome last year. Kind of feels like everything just broke right for him, but I also don't think anyone's expecting him to hit 288 with a 959 OPS again. So even if that regresses for Will Myers,
based on where he's going,
if he hits 260 with 25 to 30 home runs and 5 to 10 steals in the Padres lineup, then he's going to easily pay off this. It's a matter of health again for Will Myers, and the same thing for Tommy Pham. Both guys with the Padres. You name an injury, Tommy Pham has had it. I mean, some really weird stuff with this guy. Fractured foot. He had a fractured hamate bone last year. He had LASIK surgery for his vision a couple of years back. He got stabbed outside of a strip club back in October. It's just like, what? Tommy Pham. I mean, the guy just keeps running into trouble. He's playing through a partially torn UCL. He turns 33 years old in March. Yet, I'm still interested because last year he was on pace for 15 home runs, 30 steals over 150 games. The ground ball rate was way too high at 62%, but if that comes back closer to where it's been the past couple of seasons, he still hit the ball really, really hard last year. 50% hard contact for Tommy Pham and a 92.8 mile per hour average exit velocity. The expected batting average and expected slug were also much better for Tommy Pham. So I'm a fan at this ADP, and I think in either format as well because he walks a decent bit as well. Chris, your favorite from this group: Verdugo, Pham, Myers, Lewis, Brantley.
I think my favorite is probably Alex Verdugo, and he's an interesting case because he's a very good hitter who, I mean, he's kind of Michael Brantley actually. We don't really need to overthink it. He doesn't have the stolen bases that Michael Brantley did at his peak. So he's more like a late era Michael Brantley, and it makes you wonder how he'll age. But assuming he can get back to, a mid-teen strikeout rate, he was 20% last season. I think he'll be more like 15% given the track record. I think you're looking at a very safe batting average. I think you're looking at, probably more like 15 homers. He really does not hit the ball hard at all, which is kind of weird for someone so young. Not like he's like 5'8", 180 pounds. He's, 6'1". He looks pretty beefy. But for some reason, he just doesn't hit the ball hard. But one of the safer bets for batting average that you can get outside of the top 100 who won't be a total zero in power and should be decent in runs and RBI, because a theme for me this preseason is I am expecting a pretty big bounce back for the Red Sox offense. I just think pretty much everyone in that lineup will be better than they were last season. And that includes Alex Verdugo. And I'll point out, he dealt with back injuries in 2019 that kept him out of the lineup. His sprint speed has increased each of the last 3 seasons. 56th percentile in 2018, 60th percentile in 2019, 68th percentile in 2020. He is solidly above average in speed. And I could see a 15-15 season for Alex Verdugo. It's not out of the question. So I think his all-around game makes him very good in really both formats.
I know.
Go ahead, Scott.
I'm sorry. I know we got to move on. I just wanted to mention that Kyle Lewis in this group is also a bust for me. Sorry, you were about to add something about Verdugo, so now I feel like an idiot.
No, go ahead. No, tell us why. Tell us why you're worried about Kyle Lewis.
Well, I mean, he and Luis Robert were basically both trying to lose the Rookie of the Year award in September. Luis Robert was a little more successful at losing it, but Kyle Lewis hit 147 with a 550 OPS for the month. It's totally a front-loaded season for him. And all the plate discipline gains he lost in September and looked more like that guy who strikes out 40% of the time. So
he just doesn't hit the ball as hard as you would think for what he did early on last season either.
Yeah, through the first 36 games, Kyle Lewis was batting .328 with a .407 BABIP. He did that with an 87 mile per hour exit velocity during that time. So really, it's just not impressive. Final 22 games, he batted .147, and but that came with a 90 mile per hour average exit velocity. So just a really weird season overall for Kyle Lewis. I will say the one thing that I liked is his walk rate remained throughout the entire season. First month, second month, it didn't matter. So hopefully he can build off that and keep the strikeouts down. Michael Brantley was the last name mentioned in this tier of ADP. He actually was not great last year. He ranked 168th overall in Roto. His XBA and expected slug were both his lowest since 2016. I think he's a pretty safe bet for batting average. So if you need that in the middle rounds of your Roto or head-to-head categories league, that's fine. In a points league, he's going to hit a good amount of doubles. He's just kind of boring at this point, Michael Brantley, and he's getting up there in age. So,
yeah. I mean, I guess the fact he only played 3/4 of the 60-game season. He ended up hitting with 5 home runs, but like in terms of percentages, he looked a lot like he always does. I think
counting stats were way down. He was on pace for, he had 1 run and RBI per game basically after having 78 in 148 games the previous year.
Yeah, he's my favorite of this group. You were making a Verdugo comparison to him, Chris, and it's like you're saying maybe Verdugo can be Brantley. Like you could have Brantley.
Yeah,
Verdugo.
I mean, I think they're pretty similar. I think Verdugo is actually a better bet for steals at this point. That's the differentiator. But I like Brantley fine.
Yeah, I would agree with that on Verdugo. And as bad as the Red Sox lineup was last year, he was still on pace for 100 runs. So if he leads off and JD Martinez bounces back, then we could very easily see like 100 runs, 110 out of Alex Verdugo. I just want to quickly promote that we have an extra mailbag podcast coming later this week. We'll do it probably on Friday at some point. It'll pop up in your feed on Saturday morning. So if you have a fantasy baseball question and you enjoyed the podcast, please drop a 5-star Apple Podcast rating and leave your question in the review. We'll also grab some emails as well. So put mailbag in the subject line and send that to fantasybaseball@cbsi.com. That's the letter I as in interactive. And wanted to let everyone know that our CBS Fantasy Baseball Commissioner product has launched. The product is built for everybody, regardless of league type, dynasty, keeper, salary cap, AL only, NL only. We have it all at CBS Sports. It's fully customizable. Create your own stat categories and adjust scoring by position. It features a deep player pool, including minor leaguers, and there's even a feature to add your own player. There's franchise building, detailed player contracts, custom keeper rules, and trading future draft picks for those in deeper dynasty formats. But of course, the biggest endorsement is that I use my longest standing home league. It's a keeper league on CBS. And then, of course, Scott uses the great dynasty league. We have our salary cap draft this weekend, actually. So we'll let you know how that goes. Probably not great for me, of course. But
can someone message me about 25 minutes before that starts, please?
Oh, yeah, I'll be sure to do that, Chris.
Thank you.
If you're watching on the video side, don't go anywhere. If you are listening to the podcast, we're going to take a quick break. But when we return, we will have salary cap values for outfielders here on Fantasy Baseball Today. If you're wondering how much to pay for these outfielders in a salary cap draft, here are Scott's values for the different tiers. This is assuming a 12-team salary cap draft, standard $260 budget. Up at the top, you have Mookie Betts, Mike Trout, Ronald Acuna for about $40 to $42. Cody Bellinger for $33. Kyle Tucker and Marcell Ozuna down at $24. Charlie Blackmon and Nick Castellanos at $17. Will Myers and Eddie Rosario, which is a group that Scott is targeting apparently, for $12. Clint Frazier and Ryan Mountcastle around $6. And if you want a buck bash, Cole Calhoun is a name that you should be looking for. Should give you some power later on in your Roto leagues. 5 more outfielders going between picks 142 and 150. Let's be a little bit more brief on these names, fellas. In the round 12 to 13 range, Joey Gallo going off the board, pick 142. Anthony Santander with the Baltimore Orioles at pick 143. Ryan Mountcastle also with the Orioles at pick 145. Ramon Laureano with the Oakland A's, pick 146. And Jorge Soler at pick 150. Of course, he is still with the Kansas City Royals. Scott, Joey Gallo, Santander, Mountcastle, Laureano, and Soler. What do you think of this group?
I don't love it. I do think it's kind of crazy how everybody's just moving on from Joey Gallo because he was a high variance player who got stuck in this small sample size season, and we got the lowest of his many variances, right? Like totally foreseeable, but I don't know why we're writing him off based on it when he looked like one of the safest sources of home runs there is. So he's probably the one guy that I'm going to end up with a good number of shares of. Santander, I wish we'd gotten to see more from him because he was kind of shaping up to be a Mike Moustakas of the outfield. I feel like that's where his profile was leading. It's just it ended up being only 37 games worth. He had 11 home runs, didn't strike out much, looked good, but it's I'm not eager to buy him at this cost given how little we actually saw of that.
Santander was amazing. It was a very small sample size, 37 games last year. He averaged 3.9 fantasy points per game in points leagues. That was tied for the 13th best hitter in that format with the likes of Corey Seager and Luke Voigt. Santander, you mentioned it, Scott. Swing was just built for Camden, hits a lot of fly balls, makes a lot of contact as well. So he's an interesting player, but I don't love the price tag either going inside the top 150. Chris, Gallo, Santander, Mountcastle, Laureano, Soler. Your favorite from this group?
It's probably Gallo. I agree with Scott. He was going around 86th overall this time last season. Now he's 148.6 in ADP. Buy the dip. Like unless you think Joey Gallo just isn't one of the elite power hitters in baseball anymore, which maybe he's not, but it seems unlikely for a 27-year-old who was, one of the outliers in the game in that aspect. The last, his 3 full seasons before last season, 30.1% home run to fly ball rate, 27.6, 37.3 in 70 games in 2019, 16.7% in 2020. It's an obvious outlier. He's going to hit home runs at nearly twice the rate he did last season, and he's probably going to hurt you in batting average, but you know that going in. He's one of the best bets to hit 40 homers, one of the few guys who has 50 homer upside.
And Joey Gallo has been compared to Chris Davis, Baltimore Orioles Chris Davis at times. And if you remember Chris Davis's career, there was a lot of volatility as well, a lot of ups and downs. There was a year where back in 2013, he went from an OPS over 1,000 down to 704, and then the next year 923, the following year 792. So when a player strikes out this much and they rely mostly on power for their value, there are
a lot of fly balls.
There is a lot of volatility in those profiles, but I would expect Gallo to bounce back. If you plan to draft him though in a roto league, just either punt batting average or make sure you've given yourself enough of a buffer, and with guys like LeMahieu, Michael Brantley, maybe even a Verdugo, in order to take on that batting average stink from Joey Gallo. 6 outfielders going in the 155 to 180 range. And we spoke about 3 of them yesterday. Ian Happ at pick 155, Dylan Carlson at pick 165, Trey Mancini at 171, Max Kepler at 172, AJ Pollock at 178, and Victor Robles at 179. Scott, you had Mancini as one of your sleepers. Chris, you had Happ as a breakout. I had Carlson as a breakout myself. So let's focus on Kepler, Pollock, and Robles here. Honestly, I don't love this group. Max Kepler, he's really good in a points league. He's in a roto type format. I mean, he'll give you home runs and runs, not really much outside of that. I don't think anyone's excited to draft AJ Pollock at this point, although he was really good. And Victor Robles, maybe he'll give you some steals, but he also hits the ball as hard as like Chris's cat, for example. So, Scott,
first percentile. Average exit velocity for Victor Robles is not great. It's not what you want.
It's very bad. Scott, between Kepler, Pollock, Robles, any interest there?
I mean, I actually love the value of Kepler. Can be honest. If I get him as my 3rd or 4th outfielder, I think that's why I don't tend to invest in outfield early. I mean, the guy had 36 homers, 98 runs, 90 RBI in 2019. And he showed last year, He showed last year that he could continue to be a source of power. I know the batting average kind of bottomed out at 228. He had a 236 BABIP. He's always going to be a low BABIP guy, but he should be more like a 240 to 260 hitter than 228. And if he hits 30 home runs batting at the top of a loaded lineup, I mean, everybody's going to like to have in their lineup.
My biggest issue with Kepler is he was awesome in 2019 with the juice ball, an 855 OPS. Every other season, he's been 760 or less. And he has struggled with issues against lefties at times. He was better in 2018 and 2019. Last year, 378 OPS against left-handed pitching. I'm sure it was a super small sample size, but take that.
I mean, I followed the development of Kepler closely over the years and saw the strides he made toward becoming a power hitter basically from the start of things. Just, consistent improvement in the launch angle, especially. And he's always been a guy who's made good contact. He's actually kind of become a Mike Moustakas of the outfield, I guess, to use that same comparison, where doesn't strike out much. But he hits so many fly balls. It helps with the power. It hurts with the batting average overall, though. I mean, you're getting a solid player in Max Kepler.
Chris, seriously, though, on Victor Robles, is there any hope? It was a dreadful season for him last year. I saw some stuff that he showed up to camp overweight entering the 2020 season. But I also saw a quote just yesterday from Nationals manager Davey Martinez that they want to see what Victor Robles could do at the top of the lineup. They might lead him off against left-handed pitching. It seems like they're just trying to find any excuse to move Trey Turner down because I guess with his power taking a step forward, they kind of want to move him down the lineup. So is there any hope here for Victor Robles at ADP 179?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the case for him would be he's not even 24 years old. He won't turn 24 until May 19th. And he has 241 career games in the major leagues. It feels like he's been around forever, but really he's played 2 full seasons, and one of those was a 60-game season. So, it may be too early to write him off. He, was a much better hitter in the minors, hit for authority. He did have 17 homers in 2019. And as bad as the average exit velocity is, his max exit velo has been right around 110, 109 miles per hour. That's not great, but, we've talked about it a couple of times in the last few podcasts. It's, potentially a sign that there is more latent power there, or at least ability to drive the ball. I don't think Victor Robles necessarily needs to start hitting more home runs. He needs to start hitting the ball more and better. So, I don't want to write off the potential for a guy that young with those kind of skills.
Yeah, if you ever wanted to draft Victor Robles, now is the time. I wouldn't do it in a points league because he doesn't walk very much and he just gives steals. So obviously he's better in a roto or a head-to-head categories league if you need steals in that format. But yeah, I think now is the time to buy in on a 23-year-old following a disappointing shortened season. There are 3 more outfielders going between picks 180 and 200. Clint Frazier at pick 181, Andrew McCutchen at 190, and Kyle Schwarber at pick 192. Scott, why would you draft, someone like Jorge Soler, or I guess even Joey Gallo to an extent, when you can get Kyle Schwarber at this point in the draft? It seems like if he stays healthy, he's going to hit at least 30 home runs and the upside maybe for 40.
I don't think he's an everyday player. That's the biggest reason. I compare Kyle Schwarber more to somebody like Doc Peterson than to the 2 guys you mentioned, Kepler and Gallo. I mean, Schwarber's only had 1 season where he pushed those kind of numbers, right? In 2019, and obviously kind of came crashing back down last year. I don't know. Maybe the Nationals don't find a platoon partner for him, and he does end up playing against left-handed pitchers, and you get a nice bargain here. But I don't think there are as many assurances for Schwarber as for those other 2.
Yeah, right now their best platoon option is probably not on the roster, I guess, because Gerardo Parra is probably their 4th outfielder, and he's really bad against lefties. There's also Andrew Stevenson. I don't know. He hasn't had an opportunity to hit lefties really. So he might be an everyday player right now, Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, he had a weird season last year. His first 36 games were I mean, pretty Schwarber-like, 238 batting average, 857 OPS, 10 home runs, 94 mile per hour exit velocity. Final 23 games, he hit just 101 with a 427 OPS, and his ground ball rate got out of control. It was like 56% over that final 23 game stretch. So I still think that he can, hit 30 plus home runs. And if he's in the middle of a Nationals lineup with guys like Juan Soto and Turner and Robles just ahead of him, then there's going to be a good amount of RBI opportunities. So I'm a little bit more optimistic on him if you need power at this point in your drafts. Chris, is there anything you would like to add on Clint Frazier, who I had as one of my sleepers yesterday? Andrew McCutchen, man, he's just so boring, but he gets the job done. ADP right around 200. He was on pace for 26 home runs, 10 steals last year. He's going to lead off for the Phillies. If he stays healthy, he's going to score 90 plus runs. He's so boring, but he gets the job done.
Yeah, he's fine. Okay, if you end up with him on your team, you're probably not going to feel bad about it. I think Clint Frazier's kind of boring. I don't know.
How dare you leave?
Yeah, I know. I don't know. He doesn't hit the ball that hard. He's, got like plate discipline issues. I think he's fine. I think he might end up
more patient hitter last year. Frazier,
yeah, I mean,
Chris, was really high.
Chris,
right? I guess from a roto,
you're talking about Byron Buxton walked 2 times,
right? If Clint Frazier can steal 30 bases, give me a call and I'll draft Clint Frazier. But he's not going to do that. I look at what Clint Frazier seems likely to do, and it's not that it's bad. It just, from a roto standpoint, he might be like the platonic ideal of an average outfielder. Like, he might come closest in the projections to every category just being the dead average production of what you expect from an outfielder, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it.
That's kind of like Ryan Mountcastle, though, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah. Mountcastle has a better hit tool, which is, I think, a harder thing to find.
I trust Frazier as a power hitter more than Mountcastle, personally. And you know what? I mean, Frazier did steal 3 bases last year,
right. I think the average outfielder probably steals about 7.
Yeah,
that's probably what I would project for him, honestly.
And I would say like
I'm expecting like
runs.
a 30. I'm expecting like a 30-10 season from Frazier this year, with a high OBP.
Yeah, might need to boost him up about 100 spots from his ADP then if he does that.
I knew
I'm with Frank that I think he's a sleeper.
Yeah.
I actually had Clint Frazier in my breakout, so
yeah, that's actually where I have him too. Breakouts 2.0 coming out next week. Look out for Clint Frazier.
I think he's fine.
I have to have I have something I could use, right? What do I have here?
Of all the dramatic things I've ever seen.
Yeah, of all the dramatic things, let's go. Clint Frazier, just outside the top 200 in ADP. Randall Grichuk, Victor Reyes, Andrew Benintendi, Jesse Winker, and Leody Taveras. This is an interesting group. Scott, it was like a tale of 2 seasons for Jesse Winker. It looked like he was finally breaking out. He hit 104 over his final 19 games.
Yeah.
Benintendi, I keep saying I don't think that he could be this bad, but maybe he is this bad. Leody Taveras, if you need speed late in your drafts, he was on pace for 36 steals last season, and he had 32 steals in the minors back in 2019. So any interest? Grichuk, Victor Reyes, Andrew Benintendi, Jesse Winker, and Leody Taveras.
Well, first of all, Grichuk and Victor Reyes look like they're going to have trouble getting in the lineup. So they probably don't deserve to be drafted this high anymore. Maybe earlier they did. Yeah, I mean, Taveras, if you're turning to him for steals, you messed up, because like that's probably the only thing he's going to contribute, and you hate to sink a lineup spot in that guy. You may have to, may come to that, but you'd rather not.
Chris, anything you'd like to add to this group?
No, not really. Like I have a decent amount of interest in Winker. The fact that he flashed the upside that we hoped he would have through the first month or so last year. We'll see if he can do it again.
Yeah. The Nick Senzel lingering there, and maybe he steals at bats from Shogo Akiyama instead of Winker, but the Reds have never seemed that committed to playing Winker against lefties.
Yeah. Somebody is going to be awesome for the Reds. I just don't know which one it's going to be. It's either going to be Winker or Senzel or Shogo Akiyama. I have a feeling. I think one of them is going to be good, and they're all going outside the top 200. So Take your shot. 5 more players going between 230 and 250 in ADP. Cole Calhoun for the Diamondbacks. Jared Kelenic of the Seattle Mariners, who they don't have a president anymore, so saw that coming. Raimel Tapia with the Colorado Rockies. Mark Canha with the Oakland A's. And Aaron Hicks with the New York Yankees. Chris, can I interest you in anyone in this group?
I mean, Cole Calhoun is probably Max Kepler, I think. Maybe you're hoping for a better batting average from Kepler, but he hasn't really given you that lately. I mean, the one season, the 252 is the peak for either of them, I think, in the last 5 seasons. So, if you're looking for a cheap source of power who's going to be a drain on batting average, Cole Calhoun is there for you. He will probably hit 30 home runs.
Raimel Tapia, I will just add, is expected to hit leadoff for the Rockies as of now. And last year he hit 321 with 8 steals in 51 games for the Rockies. So,
yeah, I'm starting to come around. I kept thinking, okay, once the Rockies settle their make all their offseason moves, Raimel Tapia is not going to be in a position to be an everyday player. Mm-hmm. But we're to the end of the offseason now, and there he is, slotted in the leadoff spot. Guy who could help in batting average and stolen bases, playing half his games in that park. I like that more than Leody Taveras, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, the Rockies really want to see how many replacement level players they can get in their lineup, I guess. It's like a grand experiment for this season. Look, you can be a must-start fantasy player and a replacement level player, even if you don't play in Coors Field. Coors Field just makes it a lot easier.
That's right. And they recently signed CJ Crone to a minor league contract to play first base. And Ian Desmond opted out of the season again this year. So that is one.
I'm really excited about CJ Crone.
One less
CJ Crone could be what we think Nick Castellanos could be. I know he's not an outfielder, but like I could see CJ Crone having a 290, 35, 100 RBI season where he's worth 0.7 WAR.
Oh my God. Yes. Anything is possible when it comes to the Colorado Rockies there with CJ Crone. 5 more outfielders going between 250 and 275. Brendan Nimmo with the Mets. Lorenzo Cain with the Milwaukee Brewers, who opted out last season. David Peralta with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Alex Kirilloff, who we all seem excited about for the Minnesota Twins. And Jock Peterson, who is now with the Chicago Cubs. Scott, you spoke up Lorenzo Cain earlier in the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you excited about him?
I wouldn't say I'm excited about him. Like, just the cost is 0, and he's been a bankable source of batting average and stolen bases over the years. He sat out last year. I think he opted out a little after the season started. He only got 18 at bats. He's 34 years old, so he's on his last legs for sure. But the track record is promising, and I think he's being kind of just forgotten about. You didn't mention, maybe you mentioned him in the last group, Aaron Hicks going 251st overall. Mm-hmm. I'm actually really excited about him at that cost. I think a good bet for 15 homers, 15 steals, maybe even more like 25 homers. I think there's upside for more. Gets on base a lot, going to bet high in the Yankees lineup. I think there's going to be a good return on investment there from Aaron Hicks. Not going to be much help in batting average, but should play a lot and should be good to great in 3 categories.
Yeah, the only thing is he hasn't run much since the back injury in 2019?
He had Tommy John surgery.
Yeah. He only has 5 steals in 113 games.
Okay,
just
but he did still 4 in 54 games last year, which is, 12 to 15 steals. I'll take it from an outfielder in this range.
Man, I am looking forward to your outfield, Scott, on your Tout Wars team. 15-team roto. So I look forward to following that and seeing who you wind up with. Because
it's probably going to have Aaron Hicks on it. I would guess it has Trey Mancini on it.
Aaron Hicks, Lorenzo is going to be a great outfield. 5 more names going between picks 276 and 300. Brian Reynolds with the Pirates. Jackie Bradley, who is currently a free agent. Christian Pache, prospect for the Atlanta Braves. Alex Dickerson with the San Francisco Giants. Justin Upton with the Angels. Chris, any interest here?
I think Pache is probably the most interesting guy, and you're just kind of hoping that it's one of those talented prospect, elite baseball skills. figures it out kind of guys. He is an all-world defender. And, maybe he just kind of figures out how to be a 15 homer guy with some batting average help and steals.
Scott, there are a bunch of names that we have not mentioned yet that are going outside the top 300, including Adam Duvall, Austin Hayes, Yasiel Puig, who doesn't have a job as of now, Mitch Haniger, who is coming back from a bunch of injuries, Nick Senzel, Manuel Margot. Any of these names interest you? Anyone that we haven't mentioned yet? Take us home, Scott, in the outfield.
Oh man, I'd be excited about Brandon Nimmo if the Mets hadn't just signed 2 right-handed hitting outfield options. So I don't see him getting regular bats. Hunter Renfroe moving to Fenway Park. I think that's a good environment for him. High fly ball guy, pulls a lot of fly balls, and we know he has power. Like, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing ever if Renfroe hit 40 home runs this year, and his cost is next to nothing. So those deep roto leagues, I like investing in him pretty late. Adam Duvall had a lot of power last year, but I think there's too much competition in that Marlins outfield, believe it or not.
And it was like 2 games.
Miles Straw for the Astros. If they don't end up signing Jackie Bradley, he's in line to be their center fielder and should steal a lot of bases, should get on base at a pretty good clip too. So he's somebody to look into in deeper rotisserie leagues. Oh, Sam Hilliard, who, I kind of cooled on him compared to last year too, but like now he has the role we wanted him to have last year. So, for free, you take a shot on that power speed combo, and maybe it'll pay off this year. Maybe we were all a year early on Sam Hilliard.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to entice Ian Desmond to return just so that they can give him at bats and not play because that's what the Rockies always do. Miles Straw, I will just add, the speed is legit. You are right, Scott. 70 steals back in 2018 in the minors between AA and AAA with the Houston Astros. Gets on base a decent bit. So, yeah, I agree. If you need
in their comments, they're mentioning Mitch Haniger. We haven't mentioned Mitch Haniger, right?
I like Mitch Haniger a lot.
I mentioned his name here as like one of the guys going outside the top 300. He finished as the 33rd overall player in Roto back in 2018, and he's had just a bunch of injuries. I think a couple of years ago he hit a foul ball off of his groin, which knocked him out, and then he's had like a couple of back surgeries since then. But
core surgery this offseason as well. But he is fully healthy as of now, and I think it was 27 and 2018. 2017 was a partial season. I think in both seasons he hit right around 280. It was right around a 28 homer pace for those 2 seasons, and good runs and RBI production. I think Mitch Haniger is a potential really solid starting outfielder this late.
Don't sleep on the man Mitch Haniger. Manuel Margot is someone that I think can give you some steals late in your Roto drafts as
Justin Upton potentially for home runs late.
Fair enough. For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Baseball today. Tomorrow on the podcast, you will get Danny Vietti and Will Middlebrooks. They have Reese Hoskins coming on, and Reese Hoskins recently has been medically cleared, coming back from his partial Tommy John surgery. So that will be an interesting interview. We'll be back again on Wednesday night / Thursday morning. Bye-bye.